everyone. My name is Scarlette Bustos, and we are with the Ring of Democracy. Our main mission is to engage, educate, organize, and mobilize historically marginalized communities so that they can better empower themselves in the greater Sacramento community. Today, we're going to be focusing on these civic engagement conversations. We're going to have real conversations with people who are running for office, just to give you, the voter, a perspective on who you want to vote for. These are nonpartisan conversations, and we're very happy to welcome Roger Dickinson.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and what got you into politics in the first place.
Well, you know, it's really a story of evolution in a sense. I started to get interested in public policy and in government in high school. Was involved when I was in college at UC Berkeley in something called the Student Lobby, and then went on to law school, became increasingly involved, got involved in helping some people on campaigns when they were running for office. My wife and I came to Sacramento in 1977, and we've been here and have lived in North Sacramento actually since 1978. And so once we were here and we were both interested in public service, we both went to work for the state. But I also got involved in civic and community organizations at that time, and eventually decided that I was interested in running for office. And so that was the advent of the career of engagement in terms of elective and campaign, elective office and campaigns.
So was there something that drove you to go to law school, or like drove you to really get involved?
There absolutely was. I was a teenager in the 1960s and surrounded by the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the consumer movement, the environmental movement, which had their roots in that era. And what it caused me to want to do was become engaged and involved in trying to involve the quality of life for people in my community and more broadly speaking. And those days, in the 1960s and beyond, lawyers were the agents of social change. Lawyers were the ones who came along to defend those who otherwise wouldn't have had any representation. Lawyers were the ones who came along and made sure people's voices were heard in halls of government and other places. And in that sense, lawyers were the heroes, were portrayed in many respects as the heroes, the ones who help people get the kind of recognition that they deserved, who opened the doors to participation for people, who made sure that assets and grants and things of that kind went to the people who needed them. So that made me interested ultimately in going to law school, because I wanted to be one of those agents of social change. I wanted to be one of those people who made his work that of trying to make life better, the quality of life better for those in our community.
Well said. You have a lot of experience in the political world. Can you tell me a little bit more about your experience?
Sure. In 1994, I served on a number of boards and commissions as an appointee early in my years here in Sacramento, including the Sacramento Regional Transit District Board of Directors when we planned and built the original light rail line in the mid to late 1980s. Eventually, I was elected to the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors in a special election in 1994, served almost 17 years on the Board of Supervisors, then was elected to the California State Assembly in 2010 and served in the Assembly for 4 years. Left office at the end of 2014. Mm-hmm. I've stayed involved civically over the years between then and now. In fact, I'm currently the policy director for an organization called CivicWell, and that used to be the local government commission, but the mission of the organization is to work with county supervisors, city council people, mayors, on issues related to water energy, housing, transportation, climate. And so we help the local governments with technical assistance, with finding funding. And as the policy director, I work primarily on state legislation for the organization. After I left the legislature, I really didn't expect to run for office again. But in our part of the city, in District 2 in North Sacramento, we simply have not gotten the attention or resources that we need and deserve. I think we really would benefit by having a representative on the city council who has experience, who has relationships, who knows how to put coalitions together, who knows where the money is to go get that as a resource, and because I think there's enormous potential in our part of the city. But the calling for me for public service has always been, whether it's been as a job, as an elected official, as an appointee, is how can you help improve the quality and character of life for those in your community. I think the calling really is one that I find actually almost universal among those people who run for office, even though the philosophies may be different. It's what can I do to make the quality of life better for people in our community after I leave than when I came? How can I make a difference to improve the quality of life from when I came to when I leave?
Mm-hmm. So you took a break from 2014 until now, and you haven't been in public office in a while.
Right.
So in a lot of ways, you've, I'm sure, had some time to kind of reevaluate why you want to be in office. Are you seeing any parallels from when you first started to today's day and age? And like, what is reinvigorating you to run now, just emotionally for you?
I think it's the same motivation, to be honest. It's that motivation to try to help improve the community, help strengthen the neighborhoods, help attract local investment and create jobs. It's the motivation to give every child the opportunity to pursue his or her dreams. And fundamentally for me, that's the starting place, that every child should be able to dream whatever they might imagine, and then they ought to have the opportunity, if they're willing to work hard, to pursue those dreams. It's why being involved in early childhood development, youth development has always been a very high priority for me as an elected official and as a community member, because that builds the strength of the community. And when we build the strength of our families and our children, we create a better, more vibrant, more vital community. And we lay the foundation for those who come after us to have an even stronger, better community in the future. When I first ran for office, I'd say I might have seen it in a little bit more immediate terms. So can we get better transportation? Can we clean up the air? Can we make sure that everybody has access to good nutrition and foods? As time has gone by, that sense for me hasn't gone away, but I think it's been enhanced by that recognition that it's not just for now that we're trying to help people, it's also trying to build the foundation so that after we all leave the scene, then those who come behind us will have the tools, the experience, the knowledge, the confidence, the capability to build an even better community, a better world.
Thank you for that. A lot of times people have that question. Should I go with someone new and fresh, or someone like yourself who has more experience? What do you say to those people who are looking for something fresh like that?
Well, I think the test is who can actually get the job done. And sometimes you think, well, we need a different path. We need a different direction to go in order to get done what we all want to see done, what needs to be done. In our case, in North Sacramento, we've tried this idea of changing horses, of having someone who has no experience. That's been on the story of our our last two council representatives, and it hasn't worked very well, quite frankly. What it's meant is that, as I mentioned a few moments ago, we haven't gotten the attention or the resources that we deserve, largely because those who have represented, especially our most recently elected council member who had to resign in midterm, because he didn't have any relationships with other elected officials. He didn't know how government works. He didn't take the time to figure out, and it's a learning curve, by the way. It takes time to become a good elected official. It's not intuitive. It's something you have to learn, and you have to acquire the ability to be effective. So I think at this point in time in our history, the need we have is for someone who can walk in and know what they're doing, know how to do it, get it done more immediately, because we don't have the luxury of time in our part of town. We have been on the short end of the stick for far too long, and so we need someone who can be an immediately effective champion. I think that's the essence of what we really have to have in our part of the city.
When you're talking about getting it done, what are some of your priorities for this district?
Well, I think that there are two truly major priorities, and then some things that flow from that. So one of the things that we really need to do is attract economic investment to North Sacramento. We've been disinvested in over the years. We have not had leadership that has known how to make the area attractive to private investment. I have very specific ideas about, in fact, I'm already working on them with our interim council member. So I think that we can see a real change in direction in terms of attracting private investment. That can bring us, for example, more housing, which we definitely need in our part of the city. We need it in the whole region, but we need it in our part of the city. If we have new folks who can move in, those become customers for local businesses. They need to eat. They need the cleaners. They need the bike shop. All those things that then start to support local businesses. That's one area of emphasis for me. A second area is what we've been talking about just in the last few moments. It's youth investment, child development. When I was on the Board of Supervisors, I chaired the Sacramento First Five Commission for the first 10 years of its existence, and that's a program, for those who might not be familiar with it, that carries out programs and supports children 0 to 5 and their families. So it helps support child care, for example. It helps new moms and new dads as they get to know how to raise their children. I was one of the leading participants in creating a program called Birth and Beyond, which is a home visiting program to help families with children make sure that they don't end up sliding into Children's Protective Services, but instead have a strong foundation to build the family on and acquire parenting skills, as an example. We have that program countywide in Sacramento, but very present in North Sacramento, and in fact we've seen 80 to 85% of the families involved not end up in CPS as a result of the program. Created a coalition called Yes to Youth that worked at providing alternatives for kids to stay away from negative activities and instead get into positive things that would help them grow and mature. When I was in the legislature, I authored legislation that reduced the use of something called willful defiance in school discipline, so that we would keep kids in school instead of suspending or expelling them. If a child is suspended or expelled from school, suspended even one time, the likelihood of them becoming involved in the juvenile justice system grows by 5 times. So we want to keep kids in school. We want to figure out the best ways of doing that. And that's what my legislation, which the governor signed, was aimed at doing. So that's a real area of emphasis for me as well. Now, having looked at those two large priorities, then I think you necessarily have to address issues like homelessness, which obviously is a major issue. And again, I have a great deal of experience from my time on the Board of Supervisors and working on issues related to homelessness. Helped develop with then Mayor Heather Fargo, the 10-year plan to end chronic homelessness back about 2007 or so, which we were actually right on track with that until the Great Recession came along and really sliced the underpinnings of that away. But those are examples of the things that I think we really need to focus on in our part of the city.
Good. Seems like you've given this a lot of thought.
Well, a lot of thought, and again, you know, a lot of experience addressing these issues, and a lot of time paying attention to what's going on in our part of the city. You know, as I said, when I left office, I didn't really expect I would run again for public office, but the need in our part of the city, I think, is great enough that it felt to me, and people asked me to run, but it also felt to me that going back to where we were a few moments ago, I had the opportunity to make a difference to strengthen our community, working with folks throughout the district, and could be a unifying voice, someone who could bring folks together. Because part of what we need to do is build a level of unity that then gives us political clout. We don't have that in our part of the city. We're too, and have been over the years, I think, too fragmented in that respect. So we have low voter turnout, we have low participation in that part of the city, we have fragmentation of folks in their neighborhoods of interest, and we need to stimulate participation, we need to bring people together and unify as much as possible, because that's what will start to give us a real influence on what the city decides to do, both in terms of budget and policy.
Right. District 2 has been historically under-resourced, as you know.
Yes.
How do we get the resources?
Well, I think what you do is you have to, you know where the resources are. You have to build coalitions in order to bring those resources, and I mean by coalitions both within the district and at the city council and beyond level, and then identify those resources and bring them home. And so, not just to be general about this, one of the things I have proposed and working with our interim city council member on is creating something called an Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District, which is EIFD for short. But simply put, what it does is it draws a geographic area and then says within that geographic area, which could be District 2, for example, the growth in property taxes, not raising taxes, but the growth in property taxes is dedicated to investing in infrastructure in that geographic area: curbs, gutters, sidewalks, lighting, parks, water lines, sewer lines. So, you know, we have a lot of areas in our part of the city that don't have basic infrastructure. We need to change that. We have a hard time attracting private investment because when we go to a private investor, a private developer, for example, say, would you do a project here of some kind, a housing project, a mixed-use project? They say, well, yes, I'm interested. And then we say, well, gee, now you get to pay for all the public infrastructure too. And they say, well, then my project doesn't pencil. So if we can cover the costs of the public infrastructure, now we start making it attractive for private investment. So this is a very specific way we can start to change the landscape. And by the way, as we raise that money locally, then we have a source that we can use to match state money and federal money. We can bring money home, say, through the state's infrastructure, infill infrastructure grant program. We can get money out of the federal bipartisan Infrastructure Investment Act, out of the Inflation Reduction Act, because there's a lot of federal money out there if we know where to go get it and we know how to go get it. And that's the other thing. It's not just knowing where the money is, but knowing how to put together coalitions, as I've said a couple times, to make that happen. So I can't do this alone as a member of the city council. What I can do is I can put together 5 votes on the council to get things done. But there's an art to that. There's an art to understanding that other people have districts too, and they're looking for certain things. So how do you work together? That's why I'm so pleased to have the support of 7 members of the city council and the mayor, because again, I've got those relationships. I know how to work with, and have worked with those folks over the years.
You mentioned homelessness.
Yes.
And you've also mentioned housing.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about affordable housing and how to make that happen in the district?
Yeah, absolutely. But I would say in our district, we have a fairly extensive supply of affordable housing because market rate rents are not that much higher actually than what affordable rents are affordable as defined by the law. But we definitely need both more affordable and market rate housing in our part of the city. There again are specific ways you can accelerate affordable housing if you know how to work at the particularly the state and the local levels to identify the funding and work with affordable developers. The process of getting affordable housing is a complex and complicated one. There are multiple funding sources, generally speaking, in any affordable housing project. So you have to work to get state tax credits. You have to work to get state grants of funding. You have to have available local funding to match those state sources. You have to have the planning process work with zoning and entitlements that lay the foundation, because you can't get any state funding unless you have the local entitlements in place. So what that really means is you have to work closely with affordable developers. And one of the things we're going to need to do in the next couple of years is go on the ballot, I believe, here in Sacramento to try to raise funding for affordable housing so that we have a local source. We've had a housing trust fund in the past that doesn't have a lot of funding in it right now. But one of the things they've done in Los Angeles, for example, is they put a surcharge on all property sales over $5 million and then use that money for affordable housing. And by the way, affordable can include shelter for homeless and transitional housing for homeless. That's an intriguing idea. We wouldn't want to set it at $5 million here because our properties aren't where Los Angeles' properties are in terms of value. But we could set it at a level where it would be reasonable and affordable and generate a significant amount of money to help us out with a source of funding that we can then use to match the state funding sources. You know, we built a whole housing neighborhood out at Mather after Mather closed as an Air Force base, called Independence at Mather, and it's 30% affordable housing. These are ownership houses, not rental, but 30% of those are affordable, and that was a program we undertook to try to get economic integration and get diversity in housing, both affordable and market rate. We have a transitional housing program still at Mather that we created when I was on the Board of Supervisors. We have housing for those coming out of homelessness at the old McClellan, what was McClellan Air Force Base, now McClellan Park, and a permanent supportive housing complex also just off what used to be the base there. I mean, those are the kinds of things that we have done and we can continue to do and will need to continue to do to make housing affordable and available. But last thing on this I'll say is we need to increase the supply of housing overall, because that will also help keep prices down. So we're about 66,000 housing units short in the Sacramento region of where we need to be. We start to close that gap. We also start to relieve some of the pressure on the cost of housing. It's true all over the state, but it's also true right here in Sacramento.
Good. And then what about other priorities for the city council in general? If you could just for a moment,
yes,
just specify the exact things that you think that city council could prioritize, what would those be?
Well, at the top of the list for me would be addressing climate change. To me, and I've worked on climate change for 20 years. It certainly wasn't early to the party, but realized in the early 2000s that at least to me, climate change represents the most significant social, economic, and environmental issue of our time. If we don't successfully address climate change, all that I was talking about earlier about leaving a foundation to build a better world becomes in serious jeopardy. So I think for the city, for the region, for the state, indeed for the globe, addressing climate change has to be at the top of the list. And it's an issue on which I think the old saying that you can think globally and act locally absolutely applies. The things we can do locally to make a difference matter in the greater scheme of things. They matter for our own community, but they also matter in the bigger picture as well. So climate is what I would put at the top of the list. Economic development and job creation.
And those go hand in hand.
Yes, I would put also at the top of the list. And again, I have a lot of experience working in those. Went through as a county supervisor the closure of McClellan Air Force Base and its transition to a business park. At the time, the closure decision was made for the Air Force Base. We had 10,000 civilian employees and 3,000 military there. Today, with the conversion, there are more than 20,000 people working there, well over 200 companies and organizations, agencies there. It's looked at as one of the most successful base reuse and transitions in the country. That's the kind of work we have to do in order to create, and education, although not directly within the scope of the city council. We need to make sure that there are those educational opportunities. These dots all connect back to our young people and giving them the kind of vocational, technical, and academic options that will allow them, again, to go where they want to go and pursue those dreams that they have.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and have this conversation with us. I'm sure the voters have a lot to think about.
Yeah, thank you.
Again, we want to thank you for sitting down with us. Once again, this is Roger Dickinson, running for District 2 City Council member in the city of Sacramento. And we are the Ring of Democracy. Thanks for watching, folks.